Hey guys, this is Brian here with River City Outdoors 85. Saturday night, and my girlfriend Karen and I are hanging out because the boys are with their mom for the weekend. So we're going to do some grilling and chilling tonight, as we call it. And I wanted to share some cooking stuff with you guys on video for tonight. And first thing I wanted to go over is what we have here in the sink, which, as you can see, I have 4 nice big thick cut pork chops, bone in, center cut, that I just picked up from Walmart a little bit ago. And I have something that I would like to admit, and that is that I am probably the person who likes pork chops more than anyone on the face of this planet, if there is such a person. So no, I absolutely love pork chops. Now I buy big thick ones for the grill every once in a while, and I also buy standard cut pork chops. I never buy them thin cut, and I pretty much always buy them bone in, because you get more moisture and flavor with bone-in chops than you do with boneless chops. And you generally pay more money for boneless chops because the work of removing the bones has to be done. And so they generally tend to run a little more expensive in the first place. I happen to love pork chops. I grill them, I fry them, and they're even good baked in the oven if you do it right. I've got a lot of practice with grilling them and frying them. Tonight we're going to grill them, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to prep them first before we do them on the grill later, and then I'm going to show you how I personally grill pork chops in order to ensure that they stay nice and moist. Because the number one thing that most people who don't like pork chops have against pork chops is that they get dry. And they most certainly will get dry because they're fairly lean if you don't cook them correctly. The important thing to note with pork chops is that unlike chicken, which has to be at least 165 degrees to be considered done and safe to eat, pork chops, you got to get them to 145 degrees. And that's kind of about medium. If you were, if you're talking about like a ribeye steak, a good thick ribeye steak, you're going to be at like medium to medium well at most at 145 degrees. So we don't want to cook our pork chops to 165 because that's where they're going to start drying out. And so in order to get really good pork chop, if you're going to grill it or you're going to fry it, now frying it, of course, you're cooking it in an oil bath basically, so it's not going to dry out nearly as quickly as cooking it on a hot grill, charcoal fire, wood fire, something like that, or even a gas grill. You're going to dry them out a heck of a lot quicker that way with that hot, dry air. So excuse me, cooking temperature, internal temperature when you're cooking is very important to getting your pork chops to turn out right. That's another reason that a lot of people don't grill or smoke, pork tenderloin roasts or whole pork tenderloins, is because they're afraid of them drying out. But there's a lot of people that apparently don't realize that, you don't have to go to 165 degrees with pork chops. You can go, what I typically do is I go to like 135 degrees and I pull my pork chops or my pork tenderloin and cover it up with foil and let it rest for at least 10 minutes. And in that resting period, it's going to come up 10 degrees and be safe to eat. And you haven't overdone them, and you haven't dried them out to the point that they're not tender and juicy anymore. But like with ribeyes and other steaks, you can do something with pork chops that just makes them a heck of a lot better. And that's what we're going to do tonight before we put these on the grill. We're going to set these up to dry brine. And I'm not just going to do straight salt. I'm going to do it in a way that I've done it, the dry brining process on pork chops before, and they turned out fantastic. And so we're going to get into that, and I'm going to show you what I got going on here, aside from cold beer. So what I've done here with these big thick pork chops, I bought these at Walmart. They are Iowa raised and cut and packaged, as they say on the package. All 4 of these are right around £1 a piece. Nice big thick pork chops. So what I'm going to do is get my camera focused here with this tripod so you guys can get a good view of what's going on here. Yeah, that ought to work. So what I'm going to do is, I got this tray with this rack, and we're going to take this. This is Cavender's Greek seasoning. This is my most favorite seasoning for pork chops and for venison, for deer meat as well. Fantastic stuff. It's a fine powder, so it works really well for this process. It's got salt and pepper and garlic and onion and oregano and a bunch of stuff in it. This stuff's Cavender's Greek seasoning, been around for a long time. It's an extremely good product. It's a multi-purpose seasoning. It works incredibly well on a lot of things, but it's especially good with pork chops. This is the only thing that I ever season pork chops with, because it's my favorite thing to season pork chops with, which are one of my favorite things in the whole world. So what we're going to do, instead of doing salt for our dry brine, is we're going to use this for our dry brine. So what I've done, in order to get your pork chops to dry brine correctly, you want to take them out of the package and dry them off really good. And then you want to give them a very good liberal coating of your seasoning, or salt. If you prefer to do salt, you can do kosher salt, or do it however you want to do it. But since this is a pretty fine seasoning, and the salt grain structure in it's pretty fine, we're just going to use this. And for anybody who is unfamiliar with dry brining, what we're doing is we're going to coat the top and bottom surfaces of these pork chops with this Greek seasoning, and the salt and the herbs and spices in this seasoning are going to permeate down into our pork chops. Because what happens during the dry brining process is, everybody, or a lot of people know that salt naturally pulls moisture out of your meat. And that's why a lot of people suggest that you do not salt something like a ribeye steak or a New York strip steak or something of that nature before you put it right on the grill. And that is absolutely true. You do not want to salt a steak immediately before putting it on the grill, because it will pull moisture out of your steak and make it less juicy, and therefore not as good as it could be. But if you salt it well before putting it on the grill, and put it on a rack like this, so that air can get all the way around it, and what happens is a process that's called osmosis. So the salt pulls moisture from the surface of the meat, and that moisture pools up on top of the surface of the meat, and then slowly the meat reabsorbs that moisture back down inside of itself. And that's the process of osmosis. So by using this Greek seasoning, which has quite a bit of salt in it, along with the other herbs and spices, we're going to allow that process of osmosis to take place by applying the seasoning quite liberally to the surface of the meat. And then once we're done, we're going to put this pan, the rack, and the whole works into the refrigerator to keep it cold and allow the osmosis process to take over. And what that's going to do is the salt in the seasoning is going to pull moisture to the top of the surface of the meat, and then it's slowly going to pull that moisture back down. And when it pulls that moisture back down, the salt and all the flavor from this seasoning is going to be in that moisture. So when it pulls that moisture back into itself, it's going to pull the seasoning and flavor from that seasoning down into it as well. Now, that's the process of dry brining. Essentially, it's a process that uses osmosis to pull salt and flavor from the surface of the meat down into the meat. And since these are nice big thick cut pork chops, any additional salt and flavor that we can get down inside of them is to our benefit while we're cooking these. Now, the one thing of note is anywhere you look about dry brining steaks through osmosis, it's going to tell you that you want to add the salt, use a rack like this so you can keep airflow around them, put them in the refrigerator, and let them dry brine for at a minimum of 45 minutes. Because 45 minutes is the amount of time that it typically takes to begin the process of osmosis. Now, I typically let them go for at least an hour or two, because you just get a little bit more flavor if you do that. And this looks like quite a liberal coating of this seasoning, but trust me, later when we look at these after they have been in there a while, you're going to see that you're not going to have near as much of this seasoning on the surface of the meat after the process of osmosis has been allowed to take place. So we've got a good coating now on both sides, and we've got them sitting on this rack. And I'm going to set this off to the side. I used paper towels, as you can see, to dry those off and make sure they got good and dry. Now I'm going to set these back in the bottom of the refrigerator where it's nice and cold. And I'm going to let these go for at least an hour before we're ready to put them on the grill. Okay, there we go. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to get them out into the refrigerator and get them ready for the grill. In between that time, between the time I get them in the refrigerator and the time we've got the grill ready to go and all that stuff, I'm also going to be preparing a couple of other things that I'll be showing you guys here shortly as well. So I'll be back with an update on that here in just a few minutes. Alright guys, I thought I would give you guys an update on this so you can see what the pork chops look like now that they've been sitting in the fridge for a little while. And you can see that seasoning is all moist and damp now, and you can see the moisture pooled up on top of the pork chops. I thought I would do this update so you can see kind of the stages of this process of osmosis when you're dry brining and what to expect. So later when we are ready to put them on the grill after they've sat in the refrigerator for long enough, we won't have moisture pooled up on top of them like that anymore. So I just wanted to give you a quick update and show you kind of what's going on so you can know what to expect if you decide to do this yourself. Alright guys, I'm back here with you for the next part of this video. So what we've got here is we're going to do some prep work for the rest of our Saturday night dinner. And as you can see down here in the sink, I've got a pack of portobello mushrooms, the small baby portobello mushrooms that I've taken out of the package, and I used a wet paper towel to wipe them down so they don't have any dirt or anything like that on them. And then over there on that side of the counter, as you can see, I've got asparagus. There was a bundle of asparagus that I bought from Walmart also when I was there getting the pork chops and those mushrooms. And I've got them counted out into bundles. And as you can see, I've got some great value hickory smoked bacon sitting there on the cutting board. We're going to make bacon wrapped asparagus and bacon wrapped portobello mushrooms to go on the grill with our pork chops. So I'm going to show you how I do this. So everything we're going to have for dinner tonight, meat, vegetables, and mushrooms, are all going to be cooked on the grill almost at the same time, but you'll see how we go about that here shortly. But I'm going to show you the prep work to get this stuff ready for the grill. So I'm going to get the camera focused here in this area of the cutting board. Alright, let's see if I can get a little closer. That'll help. Alright, so we're going to start with the mushrooms. Got the package of bacon cut open, and I'm going to just use scissors instead of a knife. I'm going to pull a few pieces of bacon out of this package. And if you're going to be using it for bacon wrapping, I suggest getting the thinner sliced bacon instead of the thick sliced bacon. And you can buy just good cheap bacon. This stuff's only like $4 a pound at Walmart for their brand of bacon. The thick bacon is better for breakfast and BLTs and stuff, but for bacon wrapping stuff like mushrooms and asparagus, the thinner, cheaper bacon is actually fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our mushroom and we're going to wrap bacon around it so we have just a bit of an overlay. So as you can see, I kind of got it overlaid there, and then we're going to simply take a toothpick and run it through there, which is going to keep the bacon wrapped around the mushroom nicely. So you can see you got your bacon wrapped around your mushroom and your toothpick keeping that fastened together, and that's how we're going to do each of these mushrooms. As we go along here, we're going to be putting them in an aluminum foil pan like this. So you're just laying your mushroom on the bacon, figuring out how much of that bacon you need to get all the way around that mushroom, then taking your scissors, cutting the bacon, and then where your overlay is where you start your toothpick, and just run your toothpick through the mushroom like that. You kind of want it sticking out both sides so you can easily figure out where your toothpick is on both sides. And later on, of course, before we eat them, we'll take the toothpick out, but this is just for the purpose of holding the bacon in place while the cooking is taking place. So I'll do one more. Find me a big one. This should just wrap around the big one nicely. Not quite on that one. Need a little bit smaller one. Yeah, we can do that here with this one. We'll just get us one of these toothpicks. Run it through there. So you kind of get the general idea of what we got going on there. You just taking, now of course you can do this with the white button mushrooms that you can also buy at Walmart or any of the other grocery stores as well. I just, the portobellos have a little stronger flavor to them, and I've done this with the white button mushrooms and the portobellos. I like the portobellos just a little better for this project, but either way works. And that's essentially what you got going on. You're just wrapping the bacon around the mushroom cap and running the toothpick through them so that they will hold the bacon to the mushroom firmly during the cooking process. Of course, as the bacon cooks, it's going to tighten up around the mushroom and hold in place, but the toothpick's there to ensure that it stays on there. Alright guys, I'm back here with you. As you can see, I've got the whole pan, the whole pack of mushrooms all bacon wrapped with the toothpicks through them. They're ready for the next step. What we're going to do now is we're going to get our asparagus, bacon wrapped asparagus, prepped up. So I've got these asparagus divided up into even bundles. And since this is nice young asparagus that's not real big, thick in diameter, it doesn't have the real thick white ends on it that need to be cut off, we're just going to run them like this. If you get the thicker ones, they'll still grill, but they take longer to cook, and they always have a white section on the end of them that really needs to be trimmed off, because that stuff gets really hard and chewy and fibrous when you're cooking it. So we got a bundle, and then what we're going to do, I've got 7 bundles. That pack made 7. So all we're going to do here is kind of lay us a piece of bacon out flat, start at one end, and basically just wrap a whole piece of bacon around the length of the asparagus. So you're going to have both of the ends of the asparagus kind of exposed. And when I started the wrap, the very end of it I tucked underneath so that it would stay on there nice and tight. And then the other end that's loose, because that bacon is sticky, it's just going to stick to there. And if you lay it on the grill like so, that bacon will stick and stay stuck to there, and it'll, as it cooks, it's going to shrink and kind of cement itself to the asparagus. So you don't need toothpicks or anything like that, and you don't need to cover the whole wrap, just kind of in the middle. You can spread it out a little bit if you like, so you can kind of get a little more of your bundle covered. For anybody who's like me and didn't really like asparagus until this recipe came along, or if you don't like asparagus, you ought to at least try it this way, because this is fantastic. I don't care personally for asparagus any other way, but I love this stuff like this cooked on the grill. It's fantastic. So we're going to put this foil pan like we did with the mushrooms. I got a separate foil pan, and we're going to go through and make up our bundles just like we did with the bacon wrapped mushrooms. So we're going to start, down here a little closer to the base. As you can see, we're going to wrap it over, kind of tuck it in, and then from there we're just going to wrap it around and lay it over as we go toward the top where the florets are. We're just going to lay it out, kind of stretch it out a little bit, and you're good to go. Bacon wrapped asparagus. So I'll be back with you guys for an update and show you what we do next as soon as I get the rest of this asparagus wrapped up and prepped. Alright, I'm back here with you guys for the final phase of the prep work for the bacon wrapped mushrooms and asparagus. So what we're going to do here, as you see, first we have our pan of bacon wrapped mushrooms all fixed up with the toothpicks through them. We're going to take just vegetable oil cooking spray, and give it a shake. And then we're just going to give the mushrooms a light spritz. It'll help them keep from sticking to the grill. And the other thing that it will do for us is we got a couple seasonings. We have the Fire and Smoke Society, the Greek, and we have Montreal Steak Seasoning by McCormick. We're going to do part of these mushrooms, half of them with one seasoning and half of them with the other seasoning, and the vegetable oil spray will help us to make sure that our seasoning sticks to these mushrooms good. So we're going to crack this open. I've shook it up really good earlier. And we're just going to give them a light coat of this seasoning over here. So we can add some salt and some extra flavor to our bacon wrapped mushrooms. So we have 14 of these mushrooms. We're going to do 7 of them with the Greek, like so. Then we're gonna, the Greek is good on about anything. And because, you know, mushrooms and stuff like that kind of goes along with steakhouse flavors, we're gonna kind of give our other mushrooms a bit of a steakhouse flavor. So we're gonna go with the other 7. By giving them a douse of the Montreal steak seasoning. Add some flavor to those mushrooms as well. Alright, so we got our mushrooms all prepped. As you can see, we have all of our seasoning on there really good. Now we're going to get our pan of asparagus here. As you can see, we got 7 bundles of that. We're going to do the same thing with it. We're going to give it a coat. Vegetable oil cooking spray from end to end. Real nice coat. So that we can also keep it from sticking to the grill and give us some traction for our seasoning to stick to as well. Now, Karen and I talked about this ahead of time in relation to what seasonings we wanted to use, and we decided we were going to go half and half on the mushrooms because she really likes this Fire and Smoke Society, the Greek, and I really like the steak sauce on the steak seasoning on the mushrooms, so we decided to go half and half on that. However, we agreed that we're going to go whole hog on the asparagus with the Greek. So that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to give this asparagus a nice liberal coating of this Fire and Smoke Society seasoning called the Greek. It smells fantastic. It ought to add a really good punch of flavor to this grilled bacon wrapped asparagus. Okay, so a little bare spot right there. Of course, some of it will come off while it cooks. So if you put, it's always better to put what looks like slightly too much than to not put enough. Okay, so as you can see here, we got that asparagus all seasoned up. Now, we're going to slide this stuff back in the fridge for a little bit while I go get the grill prepped up and all that stuff. We will be cooking all of this indirectly, except for the pork chops, which I'll show you exactly how I do those here shortly. But we're going to have it fixed up so that pretty much everything comes off at about the same time. And our dinner will be ready all at once. So we'll get back to you here shortly once I've got the grill prepped and ready to go. Alright guys, I'm back here with you. And it is time to get food on the grill. So I'm going to move camera here where we can see what we got going on here. As you see, we got a nice hot bit of Kingsford charcoal going. I've already cleaned the grill grates off real nice. All that good stuff. So I'm going to get this positioned here where you guys can see what's going on. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we got our asparagus. We're going to take each one of these and we're going to get them laid across our grill here, like so. Give them just a little space in between each one. Alright. Now, we got our pan of mushrooms. I'm going to put the ones with the Greek seasoning on the right hand side of the grill. And then I'm going to put the ones with the steak seasoning, the Montreal steak seasoning, on the left hand side of the grill over here. Like I said earlier, we got 14 of these baby portobello mushrooms, so I seasoned 7 of them with the Fire and Smoke Society seasoning called the Greek. I seasoned the other 7 with McCormick Montreal steak seasoning. Give me a rag out here so I can wipe my hands off. Alright, take a look at that. We got the grill loaded up with our veggies and mushrooms. As you can see there. Now, we are going to get our lid back on the grill with the vent facing the side the food's on, so the smoke will pass up around our food while it's cooking. I'm try to get that where you guys can see it better instead of having it facing that outside light. Anyway, so the idea here is we're going to have our, as you can see, I put them on there so that they'll grill indirectly, and we're going to have the vegetables in the grill for about 15 minutes. They take about 30 minutes total cooking time. 30-35 minutes, give or take. Maybe 40 tops. But anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to cook those vegetables in there like they are for about 15 minutes. And then we're going to get our pork chops added to that. And then you're going to see how I grill pork chops and how our dinner comes out all at about the same time. And so I'll be back with you guys here in about 15 minutes, and we're going to get our pork chops going, and that way you guys can see how I grill pork chops now that we have them in the fridge still waiting with the dry brine osmosis project going on. I just checked them a minute ago. I'll show you guys what they look like before we get them on the grill, so you can have an idea about what to look for and how they look once that process has unfolded. So we'll be back with you shortly. Alright guys, I'm back here with you. We are outside with our pork chops. As you can see, they are nice and dry on the tops again. So the process that's taking place now is the salt has pulled moisture to the top, and that moisture had then pooled up on the top as you saw earlier, and now that moisture has been drawn back down into the inside of these pork chops, and we do not have course, you can't really see it from here outside like this, but we do not have like a pool of moisture on the pan underneath the pork chops or anything like that. So they've been, since we seasoned them and put them in the fridge, it's been just a little over an hour. And as I said earlier, 45 minutes is the minimum that you want to go for the process of the osmosis to take place during your dry brine. So I'm going to be right back with you here in just a second after I have the camera set up so that on the tripod so that I can show you exactly how we're going to cook these pork chops. Alright, I'm back with you here. We still have a good hot bed of charcoal, and I moved our veggies back just a little bit, and they are definitely cooking and getting where we want them to be. So now we're going to start to cook on these pork chops. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take each one of these pork chops and we're going to set them directly over the coals. We're going to cook them indirectly after we have gotten these pork chops to sear good on both sides for about a minute and a half to 2 minutes per side. Try to make enough room to try to get all four of them directly over the stove. There we go. Okay, so we're going to give these, all four of these pork chops, about a minute and a half to 2 minutes per side. We're going to flip in between, of course. Get a good sear on the outside of all the pork chops. And then, once we've got that good sear, we've locked that juice in those pork chops good, and we're going to move them here, stack them right along here in front of the vegetables, put the lid on, and we're going to cook them indirect for about 10 to 15 minutes until we achieve the internal temperature that we're looking for, which is 135 degrees. At that point, we're going to pull them off the grill. We're going to cover them in foil on a pan and let them rest for at least 10 minutes. They'll come up to 145 degrees and we'll be good to go. So that's what we're going to do. That's how I cook pork chops. I do a sear first on hot coals on each side, then move them and finish them indirectly. That locks in your juices and gives you a really nice, tender, juicy pork chop that's finished perfectly and not dried out. You get an excellent grill flavor for the 10 or 15 minutes that it sits on this side and smoke flows around them and all that. You get the best of both worlds. You get a hot sear, you get your smoke flavor, and you get a pork chop that is tender and juicy and not dried out. So I'll be back here with you in just a minute. All right, I'm back here with you. We've been on for about 2 minutes. And the best way to tell if you got a good enough sear to get your pork chops to turn over is to see if they lift freely off the grill, which they did, as you can see. So we've got just enough of a sear on that side that, because once you put that cold meat on that hot grill, it sticks to it at first. And then the Maillard reaction takes place and it comes loose and comes free on its own. So when it's ready to come free, you know you've got a good sear. So as you can see, lifted that off. Look at there. We got a good sear on that one. That one's ready to lift off on its own. And a good sear there. And then that one too. So we've got a sear on all four of them on those sides. So now that cold side is again going to stick to the grill. We're going to let it go for about another 2 minutes on this side. It's going to give us a good sear and lock in those juices on that other side. And again, like I said, then we're going to move them here put the lid down and let them go for about 10 to 15 minutes till we have our internal temperature where we want it to be, and then all of our food should be done. So I'll be back with you here in a minute when we're ready to turn our pork chops again. Alright, so here we are. We've been on a couple minutes. We're gonna see what we look like. Alright, we got a good sear on that one. It came right free from the grill, no problem. We're gonna move it over to the indirect side. That one came free, no problem. As you can see, we got enough of a sear on that one to pull it away from the grill easily. Same thing with that one. Same thing with that one. Now I am going to face the bones toward the fire because that's the hottest part, and I want those areas closest to the bone because that's a big thick pork chop. I want the bone kind of shield the rest of the meat from any excess heat that might make contact with them being that close to the fire, and to make sure that the meat next to the bone gets cooked nicely. So there we go. We got our vegetables, our mushrooms all over here indirectly. We got our pork chops over here indirectly. Now we're going to put our lid on our grill. We're going to let them go at least 8 minutes, and then I'm going to check temperature and see if I need to let them go any further from there. So I'll be back with you shortly. Alright, I'm back with you guys here. We are going to check our doneness temperature on our pork chops. And we are at 138 degrees on that one. I'm going to check the far end one, see where we're at there. See where we're at on this one. All right, let's see where we're at on this one. Okay, so we are at between 136 and 138 degrees on all 4 pork chops. I'm going to get our pan here that I took upstairs and washed off thoroughly earlier. We're going to set our pork chops on the steel pan, and then we're going to cover the top up with foil real quick. Got a big sheet of aluminum foil here. We're going to cover them nice and tight with foil. Alright, see there? We got them covered up nice and tight with foil. But during the resting process, they'll come up about another 10 degrees and get the juice pulled back into them real nice and tight, and they'll be ready to eat, safely done at 145 degrees. Now, our vegetables, our asparagus and our mushrooms are done. Looking great. We're going to get them panned up. We're just going to stack them right on top of each other. And then I'll pull the ones that are on the left that were seasoned with the Greek off to the side, to the right side. Same way I oriented them when I put them on the grill. Then the ones with the steak seasoning on them on the left side, just like I did when I put them on the grill, so we'll know which ones are which. Excuse me, I'm sorry, my outside light kicks on and off every once in a while. Alright, so as you can see, we got our asparagus and our mushrooms all panned up. I'm going to set those off to the side. Okay, now as you can see here, our charcoal is pretty well burnt all the way down. So we had about the perfect amount of charcoal for this cook. And the pork chops took 16 minutes total from the time we finished the sear to the time they were at a temperature ready to rest between 135 and 138 degrees. So they'll be about perfect. When we get in, I'll do a last bit of this video so that I can show you guys how all this stuff turned out, where you can see it a lot better in the light. But this was a good cook. This stuff's going to be great. This is going to be an excellent dinner, and I will be back with you here in just a minute. What I'm going to do first is shut the bottom vents, the grill all the way down, and then put the lid back on. And shut the top vent all the way down so it'll snuff the fire out. And get you guys a look here. See, we got dinner all cooked, all came off the grill at the exact same time. Gonna have about 9 or 10 minutes on the pork chops resting before they're ready to go. I'm gonna get this stuff upstairs, and then as I pull the foil off of the pork chops, I'll show you guys exactly what they look like, and I might even do a temperature check after about 10 minutes to see where they are. But typically speaking, with any steaks, chops, anything like that, if you cover them up with foil, especially being on a metal pan like that, that heat basically radiates around inside there, and between the heat radiating and the meat finishing the cooking process, as it usually takes 10 or 12 minutes before, even once you pull your meat off of the heat source, for the heat to dissipate enough to where the meat stops cooking. And generally speaking, it does, whether it's steaks, or pork chops, or barbecue, or any of that kind of stuff, when you let it rest, it's going to come up another 10 degrees during the resting process before it starts to cool down, starts the cooling process and going the other way in terms of temperature. That's pretty well standard across the board with about any meat. Since those are nice thick pork chops, that's definitely going to be the case here. Those pork chops are right around an inch thick, and like I said earlier, those were about 2-pound packages with two chops per package, so they're about a pound a piece. All this stuff's gonna make a fantastic meal, and I will be back with you guys here in a minute when I get this stuff upstairs, so you can see what everything looks like in the light, or a little better in the light at least. Alright, I'm back here with you for the last part of this video, As you can see here, we got all 4 of our pork chops uncovered. Got the foil off of them after about 12 minutes worth of resting time total. And they are looking fantastic, as you can see. Nice and done, perfect temperature. They ought to be nice and tender and juicy. As you can see, they got plenty of juice on them. Got a good sear. How to have some good smoke flavor. Got the kind of the fat on the ends charred just a little bit on a couple of them. And now here's what our finished product looks like on our bacon wrapped asparagus and our bacon wrapped baby portobello mushrooms. Absolutely fantastic stuff. If you guys haven't ever made any of these recipes, you should definitely try it because they are awesome. And the last thing that you have to have with your grilled pork chops or fried pork chops is this right here. This is Country Bob's all-purpose sauce. When you add this to your pork chop with your Cavender's Greek seasoning on it, it is an absolutely fantastic combination for grilled or fried pork chops, either one. And it is an absolute must in our house. We always have a bottle or two of this on hand because we really like our pork chops and we cook them rather often. So that completes this video for this grilling session where we cooked our entire dinner on the grill this time for Kara and I Saturday night date night. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy all the content that I post for you guys. I finally got a tripod so I could make it a lot easier to film some of the prep work and stuff, so I could go completely hands-free and all that. And I'm going to be getting a Yak Attack kayak mount for my phone also, so that when we're kayaking I can be hands-free and use my phone to film that stuff if I want to. So that'll be upcoming here before too long, once our weather gets nice and warm and it's good kayaking weather. So anyway, if you want to, give me a like, a subscribe, or a follow on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. And thank you guys for your time and watching my videos. Have a good Saturday night and a good rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video here at River City Outdoors 85.